it doesn't affect your IQ. Like, I don't even know, like, if I could brainwash, if you could hypnotize me as an 8-year-old to say that I wasn't stupid. I literally thought until I was 55 years old that I would always make jokes. I would always say that, my assistant was the brains of the group, right? I always felt like I was stupid. I always felt dumb. I felt like there was something wrong. And that was the moment that Summerbell really clicked. I literally felt like I was 1,000 pounds lighter. I literally felt like I wasn't stupid.
Well, hello and welcome, everyone. I'm really excited about today's episode of the Literacy Keys because I have a special guest that I'm going to introduce in 1 minute. And in talking about dyslexia, I think that one of the things that is so encouraging is to talk to people and slightly older, more mature people in the sense of they've gone through school and to discuss, to find out what they're doing and how they have leveraged their dyslexia in order to seek out and fulfill opportunities to present themselves. So we're going to be doing a segment and talking to entrepreneurs, dyslexic entrepreneurs or neurodivergent entrepreneurs. Because number one, there's a lot that we can learn. And number two, I think it's really important for parents to have hope that when little Johnny's having a meltdown over the homework, they will get through this and life is good. So with that, I'm going to introduce Hillary Summerbell, who is an entrepreneur, but I will let her tell you your story. So welcome, Hillary.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. So I'm Hillary. I'm 62 years old, and I learned how to read when I was about, I think it was 55.
Okay. All right.
6 years ago. I guess you could call me a self-taught reader.
Okay.
I grew up in the 70s in Fairfax County, Virginia, and I was a terrible student. And even
school wasn't your thing.
It just wasn't like there was never a good time. I mean, I can't even say I remember doing well at anything. And it started in elementary school. I mean, the long and short of it is, I grew up in a neighborhood with lots of kids. We would go to the bus stop. We'd get on the bus. We'd go to school. They would go to the normal classrooms, and I would go to the slow learner classrooms. And this probably started happening around, I would say, second, third grade. I remember I was in Team H in Mrs. Badonis's class, and Mrs. Badonis's class kind of had the slow kids. And all my other friends were, in the other classes, with Miss Tinkleman or whatever. So that was the beginning of my journey in trying to figure out what was wrong with me or what was right with me or why was I different and why were they not teaching me to read very well and why did I struggle so much? So that was the beginning.
All right. And if I could come in, because I think that one of the things that we're about the same age, and I grew up on, Dick and Jane's C-Spot Run, which is literacy. It was whole language. And they just thought at the time that they stuck a book in your hands, through osmosis, you were going to learn to read. And you are a great example of, no, that doesn't work. So first, I want to congratulate you because it is never too late to learn to read. And that is powerful. That is beyond powerful. Okay, so now continue.
Yeah, so I mean, that is, definitely the case. It was just so hard, when I was growing up. And I think you're right. I was listening to Emily Hanford's Sold the Story, and I kind of make the correlation that I was probably among the groups of the whole learners thing, but I don't know if I feel like it was maybe some phonics, but I never learned phonics. Like even right today, like if you would ask me what a long A is, I don't really know, or how I just never caught on to that. I just never understood it. So basically the bottom line is I couldn't learn. They weren't teaching me, and they weren't really teaching me verbal. I mean, I guess they would try to like jam stuff in my head, and but the comprehension, the decoding words, nothing. It was really a series of just guessing at the words, trying to figure out what they were. And that was really my beginning stages of what it was like for me to learn how to read in elementary school. And it just got worse as time went on because, the gap just widened. It just, I became, my reading proficiency was lower and lower, and my friends were as higher and higher. And I just fumbled through in the back of the class and, got, I would get like D's or whatever, low marks, C's or whatever you get, just barely passing. And they were just moving on to the next level. But it just, was very hard, and it was really frustrating. So that is one of the reasons that I created Summerbell, or that is the main reason that I created Summerbell, is because I want to help. I want to help the second graders, the third graders. I want to help the eighth graders or the 50-year-olds. I mean, I want to offer another alternative to understanding reading so that they can, be like me. And now I can read and I can decode words and I can spell better, and it just works. Summerbell, for me as a visual dyslexic, it just clicks in my brain and it just makes it super easy to read.
All right, so let's go back to 55-ish, around the time,
Yeah.
and talk to us about the opportunity. What gave you the oomph? Like how the stars aligned, and you made the decision. It's time.
Yeah. I mean, so basically what happened is I was really good in art. So I think there's a really strong correlation between dyslexics and creativity a lot of the times. So I was able to excel in art. And so I realized that as a young professional, I would get fired if I didn't know my own business, because I really couldn't ring a sale. I couldn't like fill out work orders. I mean, as an interior designer, you sell furniture, you sell window treatments, so it involves measuring, all sorts of different details. And I just wasn't good at it. So when I started my professional career, I decided that one, I needed to work for myself, and two, I needed to hire people to read for me and, to do the books, to bring the sales, to manage the money, to do all, to get the business license, everything. I just could not do it. It would take me 30 minutes to fill out a form, and it would take my assistant like 3 minutes. So that was the beginning of me adjusting my expectations of myself professionally to my learning difference, right? I had to make an accommodation for myself so I could support myself. And I did that through simply hiring other people to navigate this. I had a very large design firm in Bethesda. And what happened was ultimately it was overwhelming, to carry this large group of employees, massive overhead. And I was frustrated. And I thought to myself, I've got to take control over my business. So I have to learn how to read. That was kind of the pivot point at 55 years old.
When the stars align, they align.
Yeah.
Age has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy because basically what happened was as an artist, I draw everything, right? Like as a visual thinker, I create spaces, but I use, a plain piece of paper, not lined. I never used lined paper my whole life. I mean, I would make that one suggestion to any parent: take away the lined paper, because it goes intuitively against the way, I believe a visual dyslexic feels and thinks. So printer paper, magic marker, and I just realized that I could read in a spiral without moving the page. And I was like, whoa,
Interesting.
what's up with that? I was like, wow. And then I started playing with circles and circles and circles and, making compasses and putting my clients' names in the compass and like, instead of writing long linear sentences of what I needed to do, I wrote them in the arc. And all of a sudden, like I could see it without freaking out and without having overwhelmed. There was something about putting words, linear text, into this gentle rainbow shape that made my brain relax when it kind of engaged in the words. I mean, that's basically, it's kind of like the analogy if you're driving a car. Let's say you're
Okay.
driving and you're in Florida and you're like, it's straight, right? North to south, and you're just speeding down the road. One of my teachers used this as an analogy as well. If you don't engage with the text, if you don't know how to decode a word that's multisyllabic, you speed down the linear lane, and the words that you don't understand, you just skip over. And so basically what happens, you're just skipping over the whole thing. And so like, let's say sometimes you pause, sometimes you don't. There's a photograph that I posted on LinkedIn about, it's almost like a CIA document that's like indacted.
Yes.
So you come upon a word that you can't figure out because I didn't learn it or I can't decode it. And so you can't comprehend the sentence because 3 or 4 words out of the sentence are basically black or invisible. And so you don't do well in school because you can't read. So
Absolutely. And
it's comprehension. It's just like, yeah, you're not connecting with the text. So going slowly, and everybody will tell you to slow down. It's like going around a curve. If you're driving a car, you automatically have to slow down, right? So your brain it's a good analogy because your brain slows down as it tries to understand the text.
And that makes sense because a couple of things as you were talking that I think it's worth highlighting for listeners. One, anything lower or below 98% of being able to decode 98% of the words will negatively impact comprehension. So if you have 100 words, you're only allowed 2 words that you don't know before you're impacting negatively, like you're not understanding what you're saying. And then the other thing is that it's that balance of speed. It's kind of like the Goldilocks speed. So it can't be too fast, in which, that straight line that you're just skipping over everything. It can't be too slow because if it's too slow, the brain can't piece it all together. So it's really finding that just right speed, which a lot of times can be the speed at which people speak. And it sounds like with the ARC, you achieved that. So, okay, so you made this discovery,
And it's
and
so
then
cool because now, like if you go into our Chrome extension, or we have a browser, and we also have tools, you can customize the radius of the arc, which is even cooler. So you can really get it to the point where you feel most comfortable. So that's one of the great customizations that we have to the reading arc. So I might like it. It depends, I mean, in the beginning, I might like it. I think maybe I liked it more curved than I like it now because after using it for 5 years, I'm a better linear reader, which is really cool. And I'm a better speller and my handwriting is better. So there must be something happening in my brain that I'm creating new pathways for my brain to absorb text. So that's super cool, which actually I think that's probably one of the most encouraging things about Summerbell is it's not just, you don't have to be stuck always in Summerbell, but you can use it during high density things you need to read, like a contract or something, or, but it has changed my ability to read linear text easier as well.
Okay,
So,
so now let's step back a little bit
okay.
because so you discover that you're writing in circles and that you can read and comprehend better when there's this arc.
Uh-huh.
But and then you talked about browser extensions. So take the listeners through. You had the aha moment to then where you're
We are
creating
today.
extensions and things like
Oh,
that.
okay. So I figured it out. I was like, oh my God, I figured it out. I don't even know what I figured out, but I figured something out and I drew 50 papers. I mean, I just was obsessed by it. So then I basically, through a friend, there were Amy Dunn, who's a special ed teacher who went to American University, came to my design studio, and I showed her it. And she
Okay.
was like, wow. She's like, I've never seen this before. And at this point, it was literally Sharpies and printer paper.
Mhm.
And that was it. And she's like, wow, I've never seen this before. Let me test, let me show it to my kids. And the kids really liked it. And it really helped them.
Mm.
So then I was like, wow, okay, so that's cool. And so then I talked to another friend of mine. It's so silly. Like, this shows you how naive I am. He was a psychiatrist. He's a client of mine. And I'm like, like, I need help. Like, something is going on in my brain and I can read now. So can you help me? He's like, you don't need me. I'm a psychiatrist. You need either you need a neurologist or you need a person who can take your vision and create your vision, take it from the piece of paper to a computer. So I had a meeting with Jeremy Dunsworth, who is an ed tech developer. He's a software
Okay.
coder in ed tech. He was just moving to Denver. He had some time, and I said, Jeremy, can you take my drawings and can you put them in some sort of organization so um, so I can, so we can build something. I need to build this. And this is and so he created our first website, which now includes our reader, our writer, and our, what is it? So it's the reader, the writer, and the word helper.
Speller. Okay.
And that's it at, I think it's at, what is it? It's at summerbelltools.com. And that was our very first prototype. And we used it. And actually, the Johns Hopkins University did an evaluation of the Summerbell reading program in Pennsylvania in 2024, and they used our original Chrome extension that was basically created from Jeremy's work, and then we brought in another software developer. And so we basically made the idea a tool that you could use in the classroom, a tool that could be helpful to any of the emerging readers. I just made it accessible. And because I understand from, there's hardly any books in schools anymore. And this was the future of reading, is integrating with software because the kids are using Chromebooks. So that's
Right.
how the software began. And so then it went from the tools and to the Chrome extension, and now we developed a browser which works on the worldwide internet, and so is the Chrome extension does as well. So you can literally go into our browser and put in George Washington, and first American president, and you can read about George Washington, but you can read about George Washington in the ARC, in the Summerbell format. So a child who is trying to absorb text can have a chance to see it differently. And in addition to that, you can use the word helper to help you decode if you run across a word that you don't understand. So that kind of, it went from paper to, a simple website tools. And I just made a promise to myself that I wasn't going to stop unless there was something traumatic that would happen. Nothing traumatic has happened. It's just grown stronger and stronger. The project has just gotten bigger and bigger. So I'm very excited for sure.
That is wonderful. And in fact, we will have some links in the show notes so that people can find the ARC, the Chrome extension, and even the browser. I think one of the things that, like you said, the schools are changing in that they're incorporating more and more technology. And let's face it, it's part of our lives nowadays. So, for neurodivergent learners, it's very encouraging, I think, because there are more and more tools
Yep.
that allow them to be efficient so that
Yep.
they can process information in such a way that their brain processes the information for that and kind of have the
Yes.
best of both worlds for that.
Instead of it being remediation. So
Hmm.
from what I understand now, most of the theories are remediating your brain, right? Like there's something wrong with the left hemisphere of your brain. So we need to continue to, to drill in whatever we think we need to drill in. And because there's something wrong with you. I don't believe that there was anything wrong with me. I believe that I'm a visual dyslexic. I believe that I see things differently than others, maybe because I'm neurodivergent. So let's say I'm 20% of the human population doesn't see things necessarily academically the way I do. But I don't think there's anything wrong with me. So I believe that as a visual dyslexic, that I think that my processing is actually in the visual part of my brain. I think
And
that because I use it so much, my visual part, that I just think that that is my tool. So I don't think there's anything wrong with me. Because when we created Summerbell, if you look into Summerbell, we're not teaching a curriculum. We're not
Mhm.
teaching phonics. We're not teaching grammar. We're not teaching anything. Literally, all we are doing is reshaping how text presents on a screen or on a piece of paper. And with just that accommodation, just that, it's almost like you can almost say Braille in some ways because it's another way for your body to process the text, right? So we're just going to going through the formatting and the presentation of text, and that's it. So, and if that's it, I mean, I don't know, but like, it must be visual. It's visual.
Right. And look, I'm not a neuropsychologist
Yeah, but like, right? But like, I
or
know,
any
but if you think about it, right? If we're not
ab-
teaching anything, I
right.
mean, so Somerville completely integrates with all the phonics, everything that they're teaching now is just a tool. So anyway, so I guess what I think is that I think it's a visual problem, and I think it can be changed just by simply representing the text. And I don't think it's a big deal, and you don't need thousands of dollars for private schools, and you don't need thousands of dollars for, I mean, it's always good to have great private schools and one-on-one training and stuff like that, but like most of America can't afford that,
So,
and
so really what you're looking at is being able to make it accessible
yeah,
regardless of socioeconomic
yes,
situation so that everyone. Now, as you were talking, again, I am not a neuropsychologist, but at the same time, I was thinking, so we do know that we've only been reading for 5,000 years. There is a part of the brain that we basically hijacked and we said, okay, this is going to become the letter box or the area where we're going to process. It's the most efficient area to
right,
process words and reading. And however, the many dyslexics use their right side of the brain to process words, right? And so I wonder, because they're using the right side, then with the ARC, is it leveraging or presenting the information so that it can become more efficiently processed in the right side of the brain? Again, I don't know. I don't have any answers. Maybe you could ask John Hopkins for that, if that is something that some poor PhD student wants to.
Well, it's interesting because there's a gentleman at Stanford. His name is Jason Yateman, and he actually has a lab where he's doing research to understand how dyslexics learn how to read. And I think that would be probably I would enjoy that so much to be able to have a conversation with him, because I am not a neuroscientist. I am a, normal girl, who got frustrated and got a patent. Whoop, whoop. A utility patent, which is a big freaking deal.
Yeah.
And that it was, going through that process was super interesting too, because, well, one, I didn't have the money to hire a patent attorney, so I just marched myself down to the U.S. Patent Office and said, "My name is Hillary Summerbell, and I'm a citizen of the United States. What do you got for me, people? Like, this is important work, And so they worked with me for free for probably 6 months, a year. I went through the Department of Innovation, and they helped me describe it, right, to protect the idea. But the crazy thing was, during that time, it wasn't out there. Like, the teachers, like, these teachers have master's degrees at one of the top universities in the country, and they've never seen anything like it. The patent office never seen anything like it. And I'm like, are you joking? Like, nowhere, even in Europe? Like, it's so the vision of like 50 consecutive lines in the shape of a rainbow, right? It's not just one line. It's not like Johnny's plumbing service. But when you take the text and you put it in consecutive lines, it creates something. It creates a tool, right? But the fact that nobody had seen it before, I couldn't believe it. And then when we were able to obtain the patent, and then we were fortunate enough to do the study, it gave me even more passion for the project, knowing that it was my responsibility, because I did it, I owned it, right? To bring it out in the world. And because if it helped me and it helped all these other kids, then think of, that's just 1%, or not even 1%. Is like a minuscule amount of reach that we have now. And so that's why I created the software, so we could reach others, and like Georgia, like anywhere where, I don't know. I want to reach, I want it to be accessible to all, because education, under the federal law, the American Disability Act is, it should be accessible to all. So that's a whole other part of this project, but it's now become my mission, really, is to create a tool, which we actually have already done it. We've already created the tool. My mission is to introduce it to others, to educators, to parents, especially, because if we get it to the parents, which is where I want to focus on right now. So like, if you have parents listening to your podcast and they don't know if it works or not, I would just recommend go to summerbell.com and put your kid in front of it, or, go purchase the app and play with the app. If there's nothing, why not try it? Because if it works, it could change their whole educational future. If it doesn't work, let it go. So
absolutely. And I think that is critical. I think that that to be able to provide hope, and you have done studies showing that, yes, we are definitely seeing a difference. What's interesting is for Orton-Gillingham, when we are teaching the alphabet, especially to the early, to the beginning readers, and regardless of age, the alphabet is actually presented in an arc.
Oh, interesting.
But I've never seen all text presented in that. And I never even questioned or observed that it clicked to say, yes, the alphabet is presented in an arc. I wonder,
It's
for that.
interesting because they probably just did it for marketing purposes, not knowing,
I
just
don't,
like Johnny the plumber, right? Or who knows?
yeah, I don't know.
But so I guess I have a question. If you were, so you're an Orton-Gillingham tutor, is that right? Are
That
you
is
like a
correct.
certified tutor?
So I'm a certified Orton-Gillingham through Alta.
Uh-huh.
Hmm.
And is that also connected with, is Orton-Gillingham and Wilson a similar, are they have a strategic alliance, or is it two different systems? Or do you work in the Wilson? I don't know.
Right, right. So they're kind of different systems, but basically looking at it from a multi-sensory standpoint. So if
Okay.
we can, with children or with any emergent reader, engage multiple senses, then what we're basically doing is helping them to learn it and to put it into long-term memory. So it's not just a matter of, okay, I learned it today and tomorrow I've forgotten it, because it's in short-term memory. So how can we leverage the senses? But they're different systems, or say different curriculums, if you want to use it that way.
Yeah.
Orton-Gillingham really isn't a curriculum because it is adapted to each student. So there's a lot of identification and looking at what are the areas that really need to be leveraged for this student. But Wilson does take and also presents the information in a multisensory format, shall we say. So similar, think of it like maybe one is a Ford and another one is a Chevrolet. That's kind of the way I think of it a little bit.
Right.
Um,
Right.
a lot of times it comes down to the training of the individual. And unfortunately, some schools will send a teacher to a weekend training and say, well, they're trained. No, they're not. I have to go through 700 hours of training and practicums and everything else. And that's a little different than a 3-hour meet and greet, shall we say. So,
And I guess it's expensive, kind of, sort of, to do all that training. Do you have to pay for that?
oh, yes, absolutely. It's taken me, 4 years. So
Okay.
there were 4 levels and so forth for that.
So
So
how, it's like, now that you know about Summerbell, just curious. So now that you know about Summerbell, can Summerbell be integrated into another tool that would be compatible with like Orton-Gillingham? I mean, are they two separate planets, two separate
yeah,
universes, or could you integrate it together? That I was just
absolutely. So
okay.
I'm
Yeah,
very
fun.
interested in it, because then let's say when we have text, either we're reading sentences for students, kind of depending upon what they've been taught, then I'd be interested in seeing how students respond to it. So, for example, personally, I would probably use either a Chrome extension for that, is kind of how I would envision initially. And it sounds like you play around with it. So, really, my
Yeah, I mean, it could
message.
work, right? So you still use your whatever you're doing, but you could integrate because
Right. So,
yeah,
what you basically do is students need to practice reading, because we can teach all we want, but the bottom line is students have to practice. So when they are practicing, then if by using the extension, if the information then is presented in an arc, then see how the students respond. I think with everything, it is individualized to the students, see how they respond,
right.
and so forth. So it's wonderful. I absolutely am looking forward to playing with it and so forth. And like I said, I will leave the links in the show notes and so forth. So as we kind of wrap up, I had 3 questions that I'd love to ask you. Okay. So, um, the first one is, what are you most proud of?
Of course, my children. I'm a mother.
Well, I'm a mother too. That
say that that's not a thing. It's a thing, right? It's
Yeah.
my,
Okay.
what am I most proud of in regards to Summerbell? Well, we could say that.
Or you personally, let's say. So children,
Oh,
number one,
okay.
absolutely. And so let's say, taking family out of the equation. Anything else?
Yeah. I'm proud I didn't give up. I'm
I
proud I
love
didn't give
that.
up. I'm proud that, um, as hard as it was, um, I found a path somehow. And I have to say it was the art. Without the art, I don't even know where I'd be. Probably, I don't even know where I'd be. So I'm glad that I was able to refocus my self-esteem into an art, take the focus off of academics, refocus it into an artistic, creative persona of myself, and not crumble under the stress of it. I think if that I didn't become a victim. As hard as it was, I found a workaround. And so I think that, and now I'm just honored to be able to share this with people who are interested in innovation. So I'm I'm grateful to the team of people who have helped me along the way and for believing in it. So I would say that is what I'm most proud of, is having the energy and the resilience um, to bring it forward, and
Beautiful.
not just letting it go and not dying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And taking and really finding something you were good at and leveraging it
Yeah,
and just using that passion to as a starting point for that.
it would have been selfish. I felt
Mm,
if I didn't try, if at least I didn't try, it would have been very selfish for me. So
okay. All right. Now you talked about reading at 55, but did you ever have a dyslexic or dyslexia diagnosis?
yeah, I did.
At what
It
age?
was college. I went to
Okay.
Beloit College. I mean, that was the first time that I was failed. I went to my mother hired a college placement officer to get me into the school. I guess I don't even know. I guess and I failed. I mean, immediately. I mean, it's a liberal arts school that focuses on reading, and I got like Fs. The whole thing was Fs, right? And I got on academic probation after only being in school the fall semester, and they took me into the office, and they gave me a battery of tests, and I mean, I'm sure it's very possible. I mean, I know if there was probably work done prior to that with my tutors, and the tutors probably told my mom I was dyslexic and all this other kind of stuff, but yeah. And
Okay,
then of course
college.
now, even being an adult, I'm talking to my teachers. If I sent you, it's as I sound words out, it's all the special ed teachers and stuff, they're like, yeah, you're dyslexic. There's no doubt about that. So yeah. Yeah.
Okay, right. Once you know the signs to look for, it's amazing. But I love
Yeah.
the fact that when it's a later diagnosis, sometimes
Yeah.
it's like, oh, this makes so much sense. It's like, oh, I get it.
Yeah, but it
For
still
that.
doesn't help. It's great to, like whatever. So if they tell you that you have a learning disability, they tell you that you have a learning difference, they tell you there's something wrong with you, they tell you that you can't go to their school anymore. It doesn't, I mean, the diagnosis is like whatever. It's the problem is they don't teach you differently. That's
Ah,
that's the problem. They don't teach you differently. And when I say differently, I mean verbally. Like my mother sent me to a school in my senior year of high school where they took away the books and they just taught me verbally, and I got an A. I got like A's and B's. I got A's and B's, A's in art. But they diagnose you, they give you a label, or they don't give you a label because they don't want the federal government to have to require you to hire special ed teachers, which is a problem, which is a whole other situation. And that's disturbing. But but they just say there's something wrong with you, and that's all. They don't show you how to do it differently. And that's what Summerbell does. It's different. It's new, it's innovative, it's effective, it's scalable, it's affordable, and it either works or it doesn't. And you don't have to pay any money to figure out if it works. You can just look at the website, and then if it works, get the browser. So yeah, that's a frustrating piece of it.
Absolutely. It's a whole other episode, because the institution of schools, they were set up in the late 1800s to basically provide factory workers for the budding industry. But that's a whole other episode that we could talk about. Mm-hmm. So my last question now then is, if you could go back and speak to little Hillary or younger Hillary, what advice would you give her?
Stick with art, man. Find out what you're good at. I did. Once I found it, I was better at it. I would have begged my mother to send me into an art school and get me out of public linear world. I would have said to my other self or my younger self, my 8-year-old self, that literally is just devastated because of the constant failures, that, it's almost like you don't have to be like everybody else. It's okay that you're not like everybody else. We just need to make you feel confident in the gifts that you have. Mm-hmm. And you're not stupid. Like, the thing is, people tell, oh, you're not stupid. Oh, it doesn't affect your IQ. Like, I don't even know, like, if I could brainwash, if you could hypnotize me as an 8-year-old to say that I wasn't stupid. I literally thought until I was 55 years old that I would always make jokes. I would always say that, my assistant was the brains of the group, right? I always felt like I was stupid. I always felt dumb. I felt like there was something wrong. And that was the moment that Summerbell really clicked. I literally felt like I was 1,000 pounds lighter. I literally felt like I wasn't stupid. That's why I'm here. Because when you go through life and you feel stupid and you have low self-esteem, what's the trajectory? Like, where would you be today if you couldn't read?
And that's part of the reason that I help all ages, and I love assisting adults, because anyone can learn at any age. And I think that you have an incredibly powerful message that I am encouraging all listeners to share. So basically, as we kind of wrap up this episode, so to you, the listeners, if this hit home for you, you got to share it. You got to tell a friend. You got to tell a family member, because it is really only by sharing this information, getting it out there, that we can make a difference. We can empower parents. We can help children and adults, right? One episode at a time. And that's our goal.
Rock on.
Exactly. Well, I am going to thank you very, very much. This was absolutely wonderful. A pleasure speaking with you for that.
Thank you.
And like
Thanks
I said,
for letting me be here. I appreciate the invitation to share my story. Thank you.